me put my mic on. Oop.
Recording in progress.
Hey, good morning. I will call this meeting to order at 9 a.m. And we will start with a round of introductions. We will do introductions in the room first and then move to online. I'm Nancy Wise, Commissioner and Chair.
Pat Malone, Commissioner and Vice Chair.
Zano Giroux, Commissioner.
Good morning, Joe Purdy, County Administrator.
Vince Cronin, County Council.
Matt Weatherall, General Department Director.
Darren Nichols, Community Development Director.
Amanda Matthews, Administrative Specialist.
Corey Brogan, Public Information Officer.
HI, DOR, Architect.
Christina Jansella.
Ryan Weber. Simon Day, Corrales Chamber of Commerce.
All right, and we will move to online.
Jeff Van Arsdale, Benton County Sheriff.
Greg Verrett, Deputy Director, Community Development.
Suzanne Hoffman, Health Department Director.
April Holland, Public Health Administrator.
All right, anyone else online who'd like to introduce themselves?
Sammy Parati, Facilitator.
All right, very good. Welcome, everyone. Next, we move to announcements. Are there any announcements this morning?
No announcements.
All right. Oh, no. Okay. Next up is comments from the public. I will call on people in the boardroom first and then move to online. And we will set a 3-minute timer for your comment. First up on my list, it looks like I have Ryan Weber. Please come on forward. Morning.
My name is Ryan Weber. I am the owner of Token Smoke Shop on Southwest 3rd Street here in Corvallis. I'm here today to talk to you regarding the Benton County's tobacco licensing requirements, specifically the 1,000-foot rule between new tobacco retailers. Being that my shop is nestled between a Safeway and a Dairy Mart, this ordinance prevents me from being able to get a tobacco license in my shop. I've reviewed the code itself, observed the circumstances around its implementation, and I'm here today to talk to this board about considering making some changes to the verbiage of these requirements. The implementation of this ordinance has created an unfair business equity in our Corvallis market. As of now, because of this ordinance, my only competition in town has monopoly on all specialty tobacco products, limiting free business competition in this specific marketplace. I turn away multiple customers every single day there in search of these products, and they should be available in downtown Corvallis, but are not. I understand the community's plea from 2017 to keep tobacco ads away from targeting children and those of the impoverished community, but a 1,000-foot rule doesn't make sense for a condensed central business zone like downtown Corvallis. Beyond that, children will have more exposure to these tobacco brands in local grocery and convenience stores than they will in my shop, being that my shop is 21 plus and only. I'm going to be frank, commissioners, that if I am unable to get this tobacco license, I will have to close my doors. I'm asking that this board please consider making changes to the verbiage to exempt shops that are specifically for those that are 21 years of age or older. If you don't see this as possible, I would ask that you please consider giving my specific shop an exemption. As a small business owner, I want nothing more than to contribute to the city and the county and to be here and to help it grow. I would just really love the opportunity to compete within this community and not be hindered. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up on my list, I have Christina Jansella. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. In 2017, the Benton County Health Department presented to the City of Corvallis City Council a new tobacco licensing requirement for new tobacco retailers. My issue is the 1,000-foot rule for new tobacco retailers. According to the 2017 public testimony, the number one concern was keeping tobacco products away from minors and reducing the density of retailers, more notably in communities of color where Southtown was targeted. Dairy Mart, Safeway, China Delight, Harrison Bar and Grill, Peacock Bar and Grill are the only licensed retailers in the CB zone that sell tobacco. Peacock and Harrison's are the only retailers that are a 21 plus establishment. These two tobacco retailers utilize cigarette machines only. The CB zone is a very condensed area of businesses. The 1,000 foot requirement is an overreaching requirement in downtown, specifically the CB zone. Downtown is not considered a residential neighborhood, nor does it have a significant population of minors. Small businesses are the backbone of the community and the economy. I am seeing a new generation of business owners in the CB zone, but downtown is not as robust as it once was. COVID, the closure of the DCA, the DAB, inflation, supply chain issues, worker shortage, and the leadership in Ward 2 has been declining. Downtown has been hardest hit by all these factors. The 1,000 foot rule disproportionately affects the CB zone where businesses are very condensed versus businesses elsewhere in Corvallis like 9th Street and Circle Boulevard. This 1,000 foot rule also created a monopoly, whereas Wildside Smoke Shop is the only cannabis lifestyle shop in Corvallis that can sell tobacco products. Token Smoke Shop will not be able to keep its doors open if Ryan Weber, the owner, cannot expand into the tobacco market by offering specialty products that downtown does not currently have, such as craft cigars. Ryan Weber, the owner of Token, will have no choice but to close, like so many other businesses in downtown. And as a small business owner myself, I lose out on much needed revenue. I urge the commissioners to support small businesses, especially in the CB zone, by instituting an exception to the 1,000 foot rule for 21 plus shops only. By adding an exemption to the rule, this will do more for the safety of minors than does the current policy. Not only will 21 plus shops keep minors away from tobacco products, as well as unwanted advertising directed towards minors, but it also is a safer alternative than allowing any minor to walk into Safeway, Dairy Mart, or China Delight to gain access to tobacco products. Supporting small businesses means we create local jobs. We generate revenue for the city and the county. We offer product diversity, involvement in local decision-making, and we are part of community identity. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Christina. Next up on the list, I have Corvallis Chamber CEO and President, Simon Date. Welcome.
Good morning, commissioners. As you said, my name is Simon Date, and I'm the President and CEO of the Corvallis Chamber of Commerce. We are here to support the efforts of a local retailer in Corvallis, the Token Smoke Shop, to be granted an exception to what has become known as the 1,000 foot rule. For transparency's sake, Token is not a member of ours, but it is a valued member of the small business community in the downtown corridor. In 2017, the Benton County Health Department presented a new tobacco licensing requirement for new tobacco retailers. This became known, as said, as the 1,000 foot rule, whereby retailers couldn't sell tobacco products if a retailer within 1,000 feet was already selling them in an effort to reduce exposure to minors. The rule was, by creating the 1,000 foot rule, the number one concern was keeping tobacco products away from minors and reducing the density of retailers who sold those products. This is a good rule. It's a good and logical rule, and I think anyone would consider less tobacco exposure from minors to be a good thing. We can argue as to the effectiveness of the policy and how it's worked or is working, but there's a notable flaw in it when it comes to establishments that require 21 and over identification to enter. Minors are simply not allowed in and therefore exposed to tobacco advertising in those locations. As you heard in their testimony, due to the condensed nature of retailers in the downtown area, the 1,000 foot rule makes it impossible for Token to sell tobacco products. This, despite being a 21 and over location where minors, again, are not allowed. With retailers continuing to struggle in the downtown area, Token would like to be granted an exception to the 1,000 foot rule. Furthermore, this exception, we believe, should be granted to any retail location that doesn't allow minors. Tobacco sales are a reality of retail in any town and represent significant income to those locations. We hope that you will consider amending the licensing requirement to allow new and existing retailers with 21 and over requirements to enter to sell tobacco products going forward. Thanks for your time and your continued efforts to support local businesses.
Thank you, Simon. And that looks like the end of my list for people who signed up. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to testify today? Hearing none, is there anyone online who would like to provide public testimony, public comment? If so, please unmute yourself and say your name. All right, hearing none, we will move on to review and approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Thank you. I will consider that approved. That brings us into our work session. First up, item 4.1, our 15 minutes COVID update from Department Operations Center with Suzanne Hoffman and April Holland. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioner. As you know, we continue to bring these regular updates as we are still in an incident command structure in our Department Operations Center in relation to COVID-19. And I will turn this over to Public Health Administrator April Holland.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joe, good morning, everyone. Today, the encouraging news on the state of the COVID pandemic continues with this update. Reported cases are down, and statewide wastewater surveillance is showing a stable to downward trend. The last full week of data, the week of August 21st, includes 89 reported cases, which is down from 110 the week before. I'm just checking on my numbers here. Actually, August 28th, we got an update midstream just as the meeting started. So the week of August 28th included 89 reported cases, down from 110 the week before, for about a 20% decrease week over week. And 89 reported cases gives us a 7-day case rate of 95 per 100,000. We've come below that 100 mark. Of course, our reported cases reflect the sizable undercount of actual infections, but analyzing testing and case data can absolutely provide an impression of where we are in terms of transmission. Regarding our positivity, our testing positivity rate, it's been as high as about 20% in late June and is now hovering just above 10%. And while testing has continued to decrease statewide over the summer, Benton County does continue to test at a high rate relative to most counties. And in terms of the CDC COVID-19 community levels, we do remain in the low community level due to that reported case rate being less than 200 per 100,000. And regarding severe disease, we know that hospitalizations and deaths, they lag behind cases. While we have seen, decreases here, we are really starting to see some sustained decrease at this time. At last count, we had 4.5 new COVID-19 admissions per 100,000 per the CDC data. And the last time I spoke with you, that figure was 9.4 new COVID-19 admissions per 100,000. So we are heading in the right direction. Our CD team does continue to provide a lot of support to our most vulnerable populations, particularly those in congregate settings such as long-term care facilities, adult foster homes, etc. Looking forward, right now there remains not to be a new variant poised to cause a new wave of infections. It is anticipated that late September, October, we'd begin to see a new increase with waning immunity. And we also do expect to see increases as school starts back up. So K through 12 starts up tomorrow, and OSU will start later this month, and then people will just start to congregate more indoors as the weather starts to change. And we do absolutely hope that all eligible individuals will choose to receive the new bivalent COVID-19 boosters. And on that, we finally do have an update, and an exciting one at that. New boosters, including components of the original SARS-CoV-2 strain, as well as Omicron-specific variant BA.5, were authorized by FDA and recommended by CDC and the Western State Scientific Review Board. So this booster is going to replace the previous booster so that all boosters in circulation will be updated. We expect that providers who pre-ordered boosters will begin to receive them this week and next week, and additional shipments will be rolling out throughout this month. Current eligibility is for ages 12 and up for Pfizer and 18 and up for Moderna, and at least 2 months have passed beyond the previous booster or most recent infection. It's expected that authorization is going to expand out to younger ages soon. I've heard as soon as later this month or next month, going down to age 5. In terms of protection, what are we going to get from this thing? The previous booster shots provided robust protection against severe disease, but they're less effective against infection, breakthrough infection. Experts expect the new boosters will be better, but we should temper our expectations somewhat. They may not be a game changer and bring all transmission to a standstill. We're going to need some real world data on how these bivalent vaccines perform, and that's going to take a little bit of time. The process of creating the new boosters can be likened to that of our annual flu vaccines. These are updated each year and reflect the strains that are anticipated to be in circulation. So I want to share some upcoming opportunities for folks who want to receive this updated bivalent booster. We will continue to have vaccines available out in our community using our vaccine infrastructure. So we anticipate that pharmacies and providers will begin to get this in for their clients and patients. And we want to share that with a huge thanks to our friends at the fairgrounds. We're going to be at the solar building of the Benton County Fairgrounds this coming Saturday and Sunday, September 10th through 11th, from noon to 8, and the following Monday through Friday, September 12th to 16th, from 4:30 to 8 p.m. for a drive-through vaccination event. And then during the day, I said we'd be at the fairgrounds 4:30 to 8, Monday through Friday. During the day from 12 to 4, we and our vaccinating partners are going to be at OSU at the Memorial Union to provide vaccination. And anyone, again, age 6 months and older can attend those. And then finally, at the end of September, we have our usual rotating vaccine events in various locations. At this time, it's Philomath Monroe and at the Boys and Girls Club. And I think that is the end of my brief update, and I'm very happy to answer any questions that you have for me today.
Thank you, April. Comments or questions for April? Commissioner Malone.
Well, April, you answered most of my questions that I was going to ask. So, on the new booster, do you have any, is there any information on if you've had Pfizer, should you stick with Pfizer? If you've had Moderna, should you stick with that? Or is there, I think I've heard something about, there may be advantages to mix and match between those two. So I guess that's the main question I have left.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good question. I haven't seen any guidance stating that individuals should stick with the type of vaccine they received previously. And in various guidance and articles that I've seen, mixing and matching is accepted. I've seen please and absolutely agree that if you're able to get a certain brand of vaccine, Pfizer or Moderna, then they're very, very comparable, and it's a good idea to get the one that you can get, especially if you are due and would like to get one as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned wastewater monitoring. Does that include our area, OSU, or which, who's still monitoring, I guess?
Thanks. Yes, we monitoring is continuing to be conducted across the state. There are several locations in Corvallis. We sort of have a north, south, east, west surveillance catchment area, and the signals here in Corvallis, they've been pretty steady. We haven't seen a huge decrease like we've seen in some areas, but we continue to monitor everything that we receive from OHA. And then we're also looking across the state and in our neighboring areas, and we're seeing a lot of stable or decreasing activity.
Okay, and here's your bonus question. You mentioned flu, and do you have more information on that? What kind of season we could be expecting, or so much attention is paid to COVID, but flu is still there. So
absolutely, flu is still there. You know, it's been a really interesting couple of years with as we've been in pandemic precautions. Flu really diminished for a little while there, and then when it came started to come back, it looked a little different. So people without vaccination or just later in the season, we started to see more flu activity. So you know, with fewer people masking, I wouldn't be surprised if we have a pretty robust flu season this year. But with all of the disruptions and changes that we've had recently, it will be somewhat of a wait and see situation. That said, I absolutely encourage folks to go and get a flu vaccine this year, because with all of the mixing that we're doing and the fact that our immune systems have been pretty protected from crowds and activities, this is a really good year to get a flu shot.
okay, thank you.
In April, I have a question about the recommendations on timing when it comes to getting your COVID vaccination or booster and the flu shot. Can you get them on the same day? Should we stagger them? Do you know?
Absolutely. I should have mentioned that co-administration of influenza and COVID-19 vaccinations has been completely fine. For everyone who's eligible for a COVID vaccine, down to young children.
Great, thank you. Other comments or questions for April? Anything else from you, April or Suzanne? All right, well, thank you very much, April. I'm so happy that we have you keeping up on top of all this constantly changing information. So thank you. Have a wonderful day. All right, next up, that brings us to item 4.2, our update from Benton County Talks Trash Solid Waste Process Group with our Community Development Director, Darren Nichols. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you, Commissioner Wise and board members. This is the first of what will become a twice monthly update. So we're learning along the way, and we, again, welcome feedback. I've got our colleague facilitator, Sam Imperati, has joined me for this one as the work group gets underway and as you kind of get a feel for what you need as a board. We just encourage and welcome your feedback about what will be the most helpful. So we'll do our best in this inaugural update, and then you'll tell us how we're doing it. We appreciate that. So first of all, a quick recap. Last time we met, August 23rd, the board adopted a charter for the work of the work group and appointed work group members. So this update provides you with a little bit of what has happened since then and a preview of the work group's first meeting, which is coming up this Thursday. And we hope that you can join us there to help welcome and thank the work group members in advance for their work. So it might help to just recap the work group charge, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sam to talk a little bit about an overview of the first meeting agenda, what to expect in that meeting, talk a little bit about our work on the Common Understandings document to date, which forms a really foundational piece of the work group's kind of working basis. And then some important themes that will be helpful, I think, for all of us, including the work group members and the board and staff as we go forward. So just to recap quickly, the work group charge has 5 elements. So the work group is expected to develop a common understandings document that forms the basis of the work group's work. We've done some kind of collection of facts and information. We've got a lot, as you might imagine, but the work group will take and refine that, add its own voice to that document. And that is really kind of one of the first and most important things that the work group will do. Secondly, the work group has been asked to clarify existing criteria and the information requirements regarding any future land use actions or land use applications, including potential conditional use permits or other proposals that would expand or modify the operations of Coffee Butte landfill. Thirdly, the work group has been asked to scope the necessary tasks and the processes whereby we all can work together on a long-term sustainable materials management plan. That is something that we haven't updated or had in hand since 1975. So obviously this is a very important kind of look forward opportunity, and the work group will be able to help shape the process and put some tasks in place, basically help guide that work going forward. Fourth, the work group is expected to provide input on additional topics that were raised in the assessment reports. We want to keep the door open to kind of those other things that might come up surrounding the solid waste management and disposal. And then fifth, consider creating a public facing document and community education campaign around these topics. One of the things that I think the assessment report highlighted was the lack of a consistent single table around which we can learn and work together going forward, or historically. And so going forward, we want information to be available, transparent, opportunity for dialogue to continue. So the work group will help us figure out what that can and should look like. So that's the kind of heavy lift that we're asking work group members to take on. And with that, unless there's questions.
Commissioner Ojo?
Yeah, I have a question. When it comes to the task of modifying and clarifying the criteria under a conditional use permit, that would have to actually be done in a formal way, wouldn't it, in text language, and go through the Planning Commission and the Board of Commissioners in order to be effective before another application comes in for conditional use, correct? So that particular element has a time sensitivity to it if it's going to be the ruling guidance for a next potential application in Republic.
So yeah, thank you for raising that. Under the terms of the charter, the work group is expressly not asked to develop policy or opine on the merits of any future land use applications.
Right.
However, the work group is asked to help provide ideas for context and for basically sideboards on what the planning official in Benton County should consider under a future land use application, especially around the term other information as required. So there's kind of this opening in the policy that enables the planning official to think about or ask for other information, but without, that's not clear what that means to us currently. I think we all have our own ideas and opinions. What the work group has been asked to do is to help provide some ideas, some suggestions, some context that will not set policy. It will not tie the hands of the planning official in some way or create policy for the board, but it will give us, I think, a really good sense for what the community is concerned about, what we should be thinking about, listening to, and looking for going forward now and going forward. And then I think from the recommendations that you all will hear late this year, it may give us a sense for what we need to do or what we should be doing formally as a matter of policy going forward.
So it doesn't, with respect to the solid waste decision-making, that these recommendations will set the sideboards for that other information as required by the planning official, but we won't have to go through formal planning commission and board processes for some of that community input to have an effect on the conditional use per application if one were to come in this winter. But we will have the opportunity then to change our both our development code and the comprehensive plan in future based on some of that input after some reflection.
Yes.
I'm trying to just clarify that space. So
Yeah, that's right. So thank you for trying to clarify that. Of course, the board can adopt policy at any time. I think what we've heard from you is that you would really welcome and you would appreciate this kind of feedback from the community through the work group's work.
Yeah.
And then based on that work and that feedback, we will do our best to respond in whatever ways are appropriate. And so without knowing what that looks like yet, the work group has been asked to begin to flesh out kind of what those issues can or might or should be going forward. And we'll respond as appropriate.
thank you.
I hope that helps.
Mhm.
Yeah. This is a conversation that we haven't really had before on this scale in this way. And so I'm excited about it. I think it's the right thing going forward, but we can't really script it in advance. We just need the work group to begin its work and then we'll do our best to respond.
Thank you. Any
Yeah.
other comments or questions for Darren?
Yeah.
Commissioner Malone?
This is an easier one, Darren. The Thursday meeting and subsequent meetings, hybrid option, but being in person is preferred. Is that how you're proceeding?
Yes, thank you. So this Thursday's meeting, the initial kickoff meeting for the work group starts at 2:30 and will go until about 7 o'clock over at the auditorium at the Benton County Fairgrounds. The meeting is open to the public. Work group members and members of the public are encouraged and welcome to attend either in person or remotely. I think we all understand that in person is the best from a relationship and consensus building standpoint. It's always better to be in person when it's safe to do so. However, there is a meeting owl option, very similar to the one that we're experiencing right now, where people who attend online will be able to participate, hear, listen, provide feedback, almost the same as if they were in the room, and we intend to keep that throughout the series of meetings. Yes, thank you.
Okay, and you had the 5 criteria that you mentioned. I don't think that those are in our packet. So would you, or are they part of the 15 commitments? I wasn't able to tie those two together.
What I did there just with those 5 elements is I just recapped what's in the work group charters that you adopted last time. So I probably didn't do as articulate a job as the charter does, but I just wanted to remind us that those are the 5 main things that we're asking the work group to undertake.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, I think it would be helpful to look at the agenda for Thursday. Sam can walk through kind of what to expect and then some important themes.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sam Imperati, the process facilitator. As is typical with process kickoff meetings, the agenda is fairly preliminarily focused on process more than substance. It is to set this tone for the process and lay out the various steps in this journey that will take us to December 15th, where the work group will send you a report. So it is the usual reviewing of the agenda. Each member will have specific meeting instructions and participation commitments or ground rules that I've used successfully over the years. Item number 3 will allow each member to introduce themselves. their name, their organization, whether they're a polling or non-polling member, and their hopes for this process. So this is the first opportunity to hear from each of the work. Brief summary of how we got here. I will then review the major charter sections that rekindle the scope and charge elements, which Darren discussed above. We'll talk about the guiding principles that the Board of Commissioners have approved. We'll lay out how we vote and the importance of having one table where everyone in the community has an opportunity to see the communications between work group members and staff via the project email address. As is usually the case, there will be a collaboration training to talk about the differences between collaborative processes and those that are more hearing-like, where they're quasi-judicial or judicial. The process is different. A public comment period will be at 4:30. Some members have asked, why is that not at the beginning of the meeting? The short answer is because I thought it was best to first let the members of the work group introduce themselves and set the tone for the overall process, and then hear from members of the public. In future meetings, it's very likely that the public comment period will be at the beginning, as you have modeled here today, and perhaps at the end or before any important polling decision takes place. There was a poll that allows us to what I call triage the charge, which is to take those 5 elements that Darren summarized and get input as to their relative weight in relationship to each other, so we can amend the work plan accordingly to go forward. And then we start drafting the report to you at the first meeting, and that report is an agenda inclusion, and it is there on the link, and it'll show you how we will explore the common understanding documents, refine the list of missing topics, provide additional information and comment. And then we'll talk polling about mechanics, what meeting times work, whether or not we should tour Coffin Butte or not, and then talk about next steps, which includes a meeting evaluation and homework for the next meeting. So I think it's important to note that the members at this point for the inaugural meeting have had an opportunity to provide summary feedback on their process preferences and summary feedback on the common understandings document. That feedback will come to us today at 3 o'clock. I will then go forth and summarize all of that and present it out to people in advance of Thursday's meeting. That meeting will be recorded and transcribed. And for our next board update, we will have the meeting notes from the first meeting, which is consistent with best public policy processes. Traditional meeting notes do not work in this particular environment. And frankly, sometimes they get in the way of success, because they're often used to build the case and build a record versus their intent, which is to brainstorm solutions and fix problems. Each key polling question will be recorded with a notation how everyone polled on that particular issue, so the specific recommendations will be very, very clear. And at the end of the process, each work group member will have, in their own words, an opportunity to attach their thoughts on the group's recommendations to you. The main lift for today, for Thursday, is in fact the common understandings document. It's my understanding this is the first effort to put all the historical information at one place. It is intended to be a work in progress, and it is intended to receive member input. But our ability to get that member input on the first date for the first meeting is unrealistic given the other topics we have to cover. That's why we'll see what topics we're missing and need more detail on, and then every member has the opportunity, as noted in the survey and the transmittal emails, to send their substantive materials or additions or corrections. Initially, the first round by September 12th, And that will be rolled up and reviewed at our 9:15 meeting. So it's going to be this draft, member comment, new draft, member comment, and it's an iterative process till we get TS. Finally, from a tonal perspective, the first meetings are always meetings where people are concerned. Is this process going to work? Is it a sham? Is this going through the motions? Only time will prove its viability. And largely that's a function of everyone working together to explore these issues versus debate them and using that one table to go forward. It's again, explore, disagree without being disagreeable. Those are the key processes for success. Without those elements, we will, and that collaborative attitude, this process won't succeed. So I will take a breath, pause, and ask for questions, comments going forward.
Thank you, Sam. Comments or questions for Sam? Commissioner Ogerow?
I have a couple of comments. Thank you for clarifying the status of the common understandings document and the fact that it is a draft. It was always intended to be a draft, and we knew it was not complete. And it's a vital component of the final report to the Board of Commissioners. And I think my only question with respect to that document is, are you expecting that piece of the body of work will be completed on September 15th, or will there be an opportunity for changes to be made to those common understandings as that final product of the work group is completed in December?
Two responses. First, the survey that's due this afternoon asked to give relative importance to those 5 topics, one of which is the common understanding. Based on the group prioritization, I will be surprised, given its importance, that it'll be finished on September 15th. It will take at least a action at the 3rd meeting. Having said that, each element of your draft report is not final until December 15th. In other words, it's an iterative process. I will poll asking, given what we know now and what we know so far, is this an adequate placeholder for the substance and content of this particular session? If no, we'll continue to refine it. If yes, we'll go through the other elements of the charge, step back now that we see one giant draft of each 4 elements, and say, now that you see the entire overview of this, do we want to go back and add to, multiply, subtract from, divide by any other elements of the common understandings, the existing criteria, the long-term sustainable materials plan, etc. So nothing's final until December 15th, with opportunities to amend and get it right as we go.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Sounds like a good process.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions for Sam?
Yeah, I think my only comment is appreciate the thoughtfulness of getting ground rules in place before you start or at the beginning, and looking forward to seeing how this plays out. But I'm impressed with the thoughtfulness of the process so far.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Go ahead. One more comment. I know that there's been concern from some of the near neighbors to Valley Landfill about the fact that there didn't appear to be on the prima facie, or just looking at the list, a very good representation from near neighbors. We know that all the parties that have a strong interest in this landfill and solid waste management in the county need to be at this one table, given that we're trying to have a collaborative, cooperative process. So I'm looking forward to the group convening, meeting one another, really learning who's around the table, getting to know everyone, and getting a sense for whether we have accomplished our Board of Commissioners goal of putting together a representative group for this really important issue. So I look forward to hearing back about how the group feels about their own representativeness and whether they are up to the charge. So thank you.
And I have a couple comments. Number one, thank you for coming today and for all your work on this so far. It's been kind of a hurry up even more. So I think it's been going good though, and I appreciate all the work. I just wanted to put in a plug or my support as just one commissioner for the landfill tour. I know I'm not on the work group, but in my experience, I have found that site visits are really important, and they kind of give you a feel. They teach you things that you can't learn from reading. So I hope that still happens for everybody. And having said that, I do appreciate all of the feedback that has been shared by community members so far. I've seen a lot of it come through my email. So I just want to say thank you to all the community members who have shared all of that. And that I look forward to the first meeting. We will be there at the beginning. And then I look forward to all of the updates to come. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from Darren or Sam?
No, just thank you for your leadership on this topic, and we'll look forward to getting into regular cadence in between times. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Sam or me with those. And we're making up for 50 years, maybe 45 years of history, and also looking forward. So this is a big project. I think we understand the gravity of it, and just greatly appreciate your help and support as we do our best work. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Okay, thanks.
And with that, we will move to item 4.3, Community Safety and Justice Campus Site Master Plan with Nick Kurth, our JSIP manager, and Mitch Hine with DLR Group. Welcome. So you've got a cute little model there. Awesome.
Commissioners, County Administrator, County Council, thank you. As always, this is an important milestone for the Justice System Improvement Program, and especially relative to our pre-design efforts over the past 2 years. It also represents kind of a transitionary period, which I'll talk about as well. But today we are here to present a draft site master plan to you, and I want to emphasize draft because I do expect that the site master plan may still change in time as we hear from more stakeholders and get into the land development process. However, it does represent the culmination of several months of work by DLR Group. And so in that respect, it's a very important milestone that began really with our site selection process 2 years ago. And so along the way, we've identified the Community Safety and Justice Campus site. We have shared with the public previously test fits, which are essentially conceptual models of facility sizing and parking, but without any real orientation or three-dimensionality. So rather bland. And then the next step in the process is really to start developing the site master plan. The site master plan is a requisite tool, whether you are building one building or several. And of course, we are contemplating a campus of justice system facilities. And so you need to know how they're going to lay out, even if you are building 1 or if you are building 5. In our case, of course, the Board of Commissioners and county has decided to move forward expeditiously with the new courthouse and district attorney's offices. And of course, we are contemplating other proposed facilities for the site under the Justice System Improvement Program bond measure scheduled for May of 2023. But once the decision was made to move forward with the courthouse and district attorney's offices, of course, we had to look at the site in its totality and how it would lay out, where utilities would run, where roads were run, circulation, parking, pretty much everything. And so it's a very visionary, tool. So excited to share it with you as well. I mentioned as well that this is kind of a transitionary moment, and I'm really glad that Gary Stockoff is here with us today. The site master plan was developed under our pre-design efforts, but really very quickly it will become part of the architectural and engineering work that Gary Stockoff is leading relative to the new courthouse and the district attorney's offices. And so in some cases, I would expect probably Gary to be up here speaking in subsequent meetings where we continue to refine the site master plan and get into more of the details. With that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Mitch Hein here.
We do have a slideshow with some.
Yeah, we do. Actually,
I'm not sure how to.
Yeah. It's in the packet.
It's in the packet, yes. Great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, sure.
You want to start with the slide or?
Yeah, but heading is fine. There's something that's fine.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Would this be a good time for us to take a 5-minute break, maybe? Perfect. So I would like to call for a 5-minute break, and we'll be back at 10 a.m. All right, we can go ahead and get started again.
All right, thank you. Before I dive into the presentation, I just want to do a quick introduction. We are joined here this morning by Lindsay Goodman, who has joined the county, and her first day, she will be supporting both me and Rick Krager, and we'll be moving over here in a couple of weeks. So she'll be sitting very close to the commissioners, and I just want to say welcome, Lindsay.
Awesome. Welcome, Lindsay.
All right, with that, Mitch.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, commissioners. This is really exciting opportunity to be able to share these plans with you. As Nick was saying, this is something that we've been working towards for the last over 2 years now. And the process really started with our site selection. We've evaluated over 40 sites with community feedback, test fits. This is the reason that we're talking about the site we're talking about today. So in order to get into and understand why it looks the way that it does, and we'll walk through all of this in the pictures and the model and everything. To understand this, we need to understand some understanding of the site and the kinds of opportunities and constraints the site affords us, as well as to talk through the design process and the kind of thought and things that we're thinking about as we're laying out and considering where these buildings go on campus. So to start with our site understanding, this is our north site here, the red dashed line. Willamette River is on the immediate south side of it, HP campus to the east. And so the next couple slides are just kind of building up this is what's on site here. So from a setback standpoint, there's a 50-foot arterial setback from Highway 20. There's the Willamette River Greenway. This is a special zone, a special offset zone from the Willamette River, special consideration for building inside of that. The plan is largely outside of that. There is a collector road that will have to go through that. So it's noted as something that's still, from a procedural standpoint, something you need to pay attention to. And then the site is zoned general industrial, and with that comes several different kinds of setbacks. There's the important ones are there's a 100-foot setback. Within that, there's also kind of a 35-foot setback inside of that. And both of those are specific to residential zones. So that's why it's on the north. And it's also specific to Willamette River Greenway overlay. That's why it's on the south. So for the nearest 35 feet from a property line, it's just offset. It's just landscaping. From 35 feet to 100 feet, you can build hardscape roads, parking within it, but no buildings. So as we work overlaying all of this information onto our site to figure out where is the buildable area, what can we actually work with? Now from the site, there are quite a number of really good views to the river, to Willamette River, across the river, and also towards downtown. And then once you can become elevated a little bit off the ground, there's even views to Mary's Peak to the west. The floodplain, this is something we've talked a lot about, including in this setting. Noted on this diagram are two different colors. The blue swatch over everything is the 100-year floodplain. That's to say that it's almost completely outside of our site. So no concerns with the 100-year floodplain. This is the floodplain that's noted in the Corvallis Land Development Code. The other one that I've noted on here in orange is the 500-year floodplain. This one is the one that's critical for the Emergency Operations Center and critical to the kind of funding that building is receiving. So again, we've superimposed it on here. It will not be an impact to how the buildings are laid down on the site. All of the buildings will be above both of these floodplain elevations.
And if I may just to add relative to the 500-year floodplain, there is a limited and expected amount of site preparation, movement of dirt. And through that expected process, it will put all of the proposed, current and proposed facilities above the 500-year floodplain. So very easy, you can easily mitigate that concern just by moving some site dirt around, which is part of an expected process when you're building roads and building foundations and building interior pathways as well.
Yeah, thank you. Next is an understanding of the roadways and other kinds of public improvements that are on site. This is pretty crude, but the Corvallis has a transportation system plan that's noted a collector road to be constructed as part of this project. That's this gray bar here. In the TSP, it's conceptually located, so we're going to be working with Corvallis along with ODOT to figure out what is that alignment in relation to our project. But generally, they show it here. Our plans are in line with where they're showing it currently, and those discussions are underway. On the south side here, we've noted there's an existing sidewalk, but as part of this project, that sidewalk is included to be widened into a multimodal path along the south side of our site. From a utility standpoint, the stormwater is designed to be transported to Garfield Creek to the west. And so the road will have stormwater conveyance, a pipe underneath of that to convey it through. And then we'll talk about how the site deals with stormwater, but all of that will be moving towards the west. Water lines, there's two existing water lines, one along the highway near the site, and the other one is parallel to the railroad tracks. And the city is noting this is how they'd like that connected going through our site. So we have plans for providing a new water line going through our site underneath that collector road, which would then serve our site, the courthouse, and the future full build out of the master plan. And sanitary, similarly, moving to the existing line, that's the solid line, dash line's the new, sanitary lines moving towards the west.
I was just again going to add relative to sanitary and water, the sizing and actual routing is something that we will continue to work collaboratively with the City of Corvallis Public Works Department on as we move forward. So these are some of the details that remain to address.
So this is the original test fit. This is the crude diagram of including all of the offsets, locating conceptually where that road is, offsets from the new road, and figuring out, does everything even fit on the site? This is our starting point. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about the process of design. This is something that is just square footage, just making sure we have room for everything. So how do we take this and overlay ideas of wayfinding, views, operational efficiency into something that arrives into what we have to share with you today? So at this early stage, what we're looking at is public staff circulation. So where public parking is, where secure staff parking is located, the necessary need for a ring road, some kind of circulation that goes through around the entire site, and then how the buildings are connected to each other. So at this level, having the court immediately adjacent to the correctional facility, that's about as key as it gets here. The sheriff may or may not have a potential direct connection, but it's adjacent to the correctional facility. And so we're trying to locate, we know the general shape and alignment of those based on that information right up front. So we take that and we zoom way back out again. And this is starting to go into how the sausage is made, what the design process looks like for us. And so at the top of this page, that's basically all the information I covered, that our internal design team needed to know to start to get into it. It's the exact same kind of information that I was just talking about, site understanding, pictures from the site, maps, and so forth. Along the bottom, these are all the iterations and different versions of that plan that we've kind of gone through from the test fit. So we're not going to talk about all these. I do have 3 that kind of rose up to the top, and then how we arrived at it today. That is to say, there's lots of permutations and iterations. We design something, put it down, look at it, and say, well, what if you did it like this? And then we discuss the pros and cons of that. And we've selected a couple of those to talk through that help inform why this is actually makes the most sense. So this is what those work sessions look like. They're quite messy. We have sketches just overlaid with trace paper, people taking a thing and then sketching on top of it on the computer, and then it's my job, our job as designers to take these sketches and figure out, okay, well, what did that actually mean? I don't even remember what we were talking about. Does this even make sense today? We take those sketches and I call it right sizing. So, okay, public parking here, it's a blob. Okay, well, how big is that public parking? Do these ideas still work? So these are three that I do want to just touch on really briefly. On the left is something that looks a lot like the test, but it's this L-shaped piece. The sheriff and the courthouse are kind of swapped. But the main idea here is that public parking is right at the southeast corner here. So as you're driving in, that's one of the first things you're seeing. Public parking is hidden behind other buildings. You have an understanding of, as you're driving west to east on the highway, exactly where you're going. So from a wayfinding standpoint, making a lot of sense. Everything else is pretty compact here. I think this was trying to potentially share some central lobby experience between all of the buildings, which we've over time kind of pulled apart to have each one have expression. This middle one I think is the most interesting. It's the most divergent from any of the other ideas we've talked about or that we're showing today. And this is starting with the idea that conceptual collector road is shown conceptually on the TSP. So how far can we push that? What if we pushed it all the way to the west and we put the entire campus on the east side of that collector road? What does that afford us to do? The other thing that this plan did is lined up all of the buildings linearly, sort of all facing the highway, with the idea that this is giving frontage to each one of these buildings. So as you drive by, you can see each one of these. In reality, what it ends up doing is there's such a high requirement for not only public parking, but for staff and county parking. And that's not just putting it on the site, that's making sure that the county parking that's used by the sheriff is immediately adjacent to the sheriff building, so that when there are emergencies, they're leaving that building, getting right in the car, they're not walking across campus to get into that car. So that starts to lock in the requirement to have a lot of parking almost surrounding some of these buildings from a public and operations county staff side. So in reality, where we wanted those buildings to be right along the frontage, there's in reality actually quite a bit of staff parking, county parking in between the building, the highway, and then all the public parking is north of that. The collector road being on the west side of the campus has implications for how the site is drained to the west. This is important. When you locate it on the east side of this, all of the stormwater that's falling on our site is to be conveyed via a pipe that's underground through the site to the west into Garfield Creek. So instead of locating it immediately adjacent to the creek, by pushing it further away, now you're building more utilities to connect it to that stormwater system, to the natural system. And then this last one is sort of a hybrid of what we've been talking about. It's an L-shaped scheme preferencing the public experience of the courthouse and the sheriff and emergency building, putting the correctional facility behind that. There are some public, there's a public lobby for that correctional facility. So putting it completely behind it isn't totally ideal. The other thing that this did was put all of the public parking on the northeast side of it. And so while I think in the sketch version of it makes a lot of sense, once we see it in reality as designers and see the full size of that parking, it becomes a little bit problematic. This is what that work session looks like. We have it was actually this model here with a number of these inserts. These are all able to be pulled out. So we have multiple versions of these with each one of those schemes that we're looking at. The team that you're looking at here is the same team that's working on the courthouse. So there's some consistency with who was in the room developing this plan and having that understanding of why the courthouse is located where it is. All that's kind of understood. So as we go forward, knowing what was really critical about why the courthouse landed there is sort of embedded in that team. So now we're getting to where we are today. So taking one of those schemes, one of the L-shaped schemes, the first one that we talked about, and somebody said, well, what if we rotated it to get it on the solar axis? And so that's what we're going to talk about here, how we take this idea, this sketch, this moving some models around. This is what it looks like at the end of the day. And right sizing it. This is us, moving it through, making sure everything is sized correctly. Still not beautiful, not nice to look at, but now it's actually appropriately sized. And then we take this and try to take it to soften it up. And so from here to here, now it looks like campus. This is the first sketch that we received from Karen McCarthy, our landscape architecture consultant on this, who's taking the arrangement of buildings and actually drawing exactly how that parking works. So you're not seeing large swaths of asphalt anymore. You're seeing it actually broken up with stormwater, with lanes, drive lines. And then from here, it becomes a hard line drawing. And so I'll pause in a second. The next one is a three-dimensional version of this, but this is the cleaned up sketch of it. And so north on this one is directly straight upwards on the page. And then I think it's a little bit helpful to see it in 3 dimensions. And I'll pause on this one and kind of talk about what we're looking at. But this is the arrangement. This is the draft site master plan of that campus. So that was a lot, but this is the kinds of thought that go into this. There's some key points in this. From our earlier studies, we realized we can take these buildings and rotate them a little bit. So now north is to the top right, north to the top right of the page. So I've rotated the image. The courthouse and correctional facility are both rotated to be on north-south axis. So from a solar standpoint, passive solar design, this is starting the project off in the best foot possible. Orienting stuff towards the sun is going to set the project off much easier further down the line to control glare, to control solar heat gain, and to provide daylighting into the interior spaces. So from a landscape standpoint, the way that the buildings are sitting on the site, having it on the west side of the site drains naturally to the west and to the north. So any rain that's falling here is being transported through natural means and then drains naturally as much as possible towards that Garfield Creek to the northwest of the site. The courthouse is here in the middle. That's blue here. So courthouse is blue. The correctional facility is this kind of pink salmon color building here. And then the sheriff and emergency building is the darker blue building on the right side of the page. With the courthouse in the middle on the south side of the site, it's a 3-story building. This is something that's necessary from having the flood elevation so high on the site. Sometimes you can go one grade below here with the water where it is. Everything is raised up. So first floor, second floor, third floor of the courthouse. Courtrooms are on the second and third floor. Administrative and offices and jury assembly are all on the first floor of that courthouse. By elevating it, by having 3 stories here, having on the south side, there's a presence to the courthouse. As you're driving by the highway, whether you're coming into campus or not, that's what you see. You see the courthouse from the highway. If you're approaching the courthouse from a wayfinding standpoint, this is really ideal. You're approaching the site usually from the west. You're driving by the site, you see this courthouse, you turn left along the collector road, you still see the courthouse. You turn left into into the main public entry here. And this is this kind of an entry boulevard that orients you directly to Center Plaza, where all 3 of these buildings open up towards. And you understand where the main entry is of that courthouse. You've eyes on it the entire time as you're entering the site. You can drive right up to the front of it, be dropped off, or go into the public parking, and you have an understanding of where you're going. So you're not meandering around the site. It can be very stressful approaching buildings like this for the public who don't do it every day. And so that kind of setting the tone off on the right foot is really important from a wayfinding standpoint.
Mitch, are the yellow highlights the public entry?
Yeah, thank you. And these are shown sort of schematically, conceptually, just to say this is the public facing part of it. It's important to differentiate where the public would touch the building versus service side, staff sides of it. And so the main point of indicating a little bit, it's kind of on the back side of the courthouse here, but indicating these yellow faces here is to say all 3 of these buildings are intended to open up towards a central courtyard. And so as you park, you can see 3 entrances, you know which one's which. You're not meandering around buildings, you're not going down alleys or around anything. to get to that public entrance. The other thing that the elevation of that courthouse affords are views. The massing of this is this isn't the actual massing of a building. This is just programmatically, but what it does contain is the idea of courthouse has administrative offices, judges' chambers, and then there's also a public waiting area. And so that's on the south. All of those are meant to be on the south side of that building. So as you're the public coming into the building, rising up through the building, you're entering on the south side of the building, you're seeing south, you're seeing those views that we were talking about, views across the river, views to downtown. Those views are also afforded to the judges' chambers, possibly the jury deliberation areas, depending on how all of that kind of lays out in this area on the left side of the building. Daylighting throughout by having that elevated, by having the building in this orientation. Those courtrooms can be daylit from the sides, from the front, through that public corridor. It's called borrowed light, as well as for that top floor, potentially with skylights. So a lot of opportunity for lighting and views with this particular orientation and massing. Operational efficiency is one that we touched on early on, and I want to note that the correctional facility is designed to be directly connected to the courthouse. So you're not busing any adults in custody between the correctional facility and the courthouse. When we talk a little bit about phasing, the Sally Port will be shared between the correctional facility and that courthouse. So there's a Sally Port that exists in between. That's sort of the link between those two buildings. And so that Sally Port can be used not only for the correctional facility, but also daily for the courthouse. The Sally Port is how adults in custody are brought into that courthouse securely. And that's all happening along the backside inside this little courtyard right in here. So functions from the public are separated from secure functions, staff functions on the backside of the building. And the last thing to note on here is about future expansion. This was something that was a very high criteria when we were looking at site selection. And it's something that has been guiding a lot of the site discussion as we go through the test fits. It's not just the program we're talking about for the campus, but is there room for future expansion of that effort? And so here I've noted potential future expansion of the correctional facility just west of this block here. And then future expansion is also saved for expansion for the district attorney on the southwest side of the courthouse. So for those to expand, they're not talking about building on top of existing buildings. They're not talking about demolishing buildings to make that happen. That space has been preserved in this plan so that they can be built and connected to those existing buildings without operationally impacting them as much as possible. The next couple slides are talking about phasing and next steps. So I'll just pause here to see, are there any questions with what we've covered so far with the arrangement or logic of where anything is, or is it clear where these buildings are?
Sure. The proposed collector. Sorry, the proposed collector is off to the side there.
Yep, this road right here, that on the right side of the page, that's the new collector road.
Okay, and is it still, it's not still going like this?
Yeah,
right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay, it's more straight. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Other comments or questions?
So.
Please.
I was curious how long your group spent getting from the test fit to what we're looking at now.
The process has, I mean, in total, that design process is active through probably last week. We're talking up to last week, and then probably 2 months prior to that is when we kicked off that kind of conceptual. So there's periods of really intense work sessions where everybody's coming into the room and a lot of work's done. Then there's weeks where we take that and start to clean it up, come back again. And so it's been about, I think, a 2.5, maybe a 3-month long process between what we're looking at here and that first collecting the information, getting that team together to start that.
Okay, great. And this can probably be answered later, but how long do you think there's flexibility in design work? I mean, what, now we have this one, how much longer is this flexible or changeable?
Yeah, the important parts about the master plan effort is to provide for future flexibility of the design team to build something that's unique and meeting those requirements. And so it's not intended to be a architectural design. It's intended to locate the buildings so that courthouse is located here intentionally because it needs to do a lot of things functionally. We need generally the public entrance should be like this in order to line up with the other entrances of the other buildings. And the other thing that's important about that is the levels, the number of levels of the building gets locked in at this stage. If you were to take the top floor off this and put it next to it, obviously that's impacting what's around it. Beyond that, the architectural expression of that, none of that is intended to be done at this point. And so these are just shown as boxes, how those buildings are articulated, what they're made of, how the interiors of them are actually planned, all require a lot more the actual architectural design process where you meet with the stakeholders and go through the floor planning process and go through all of the other building design. So the short of that is this is really carefully intended to not lock in future design work, but just lock in the most important pieces so that that work doesn't impede other buildings on campus.
Okay, but as far as locating boxes, this is fairly well firmed up at this point, or do you anticipate some more discussion on exact where the big chunks go or are oriented?
I think there's still some flexibility. One thing that we've talked about with the sheriff is it possible to be directly connected to the correctional facility? And this plan certainly affords that. If that building were to move over and be directly connected to it, that doesn't change, drastically anything that's happening. So moves like that, and the overall shape of it is all still sort of flexible. I'd say that it's mostly firmed up in the location. You're not going to see anything totally flipping, but slight rotations of buildings, slight shifts of buildings moving around a little bit could all sort of be expected in the design process. But we're not going to see anything where at this point where we're going to want the road flipped to the other side of it, and that will impact the whole plan, or moving the courthouse from this side to the other side of the sheriff building would change the whole plan.
And that was really my question. So, and I appreciate the discussion on solar and light and those kind of considerations as part of the site operation.
Great.
I was just going to echo what Commissioner Malone just said. I appreciate the thoughtfulness about aspect and considerations of heating and cooling, and also the natural drainage, maximizing that where possible, and building in those stormwater retention features from the get-go. And the wayfinding emphasis. I think that's also really important. It's much less stressful to go to court or go to a government building when it's easy to get there, easy to find your way around. It's always traumatic, not always, but for many people, it's a traumatic experience to have to go to visit a courthouse. And the more we can do to make that straightforward, the better.
Agreed. And thank you for the clarifications. This site, the area of this site, there's no wetlands over here, is that correct?
There's not wetlands on the site. There's wetlands immediately to the west in Garfield Creek. Okay. So for the development of the actual site, there's not an impact.
It's Garfield Creek?
I believe it, yeah.
Not Dixon Creek?
I'd have to.
Okay, I've just never heard of Garfield Creek. I'm not saying you're not right.
Okay.
Yeah, learn something new every day. And then, I'm trying to just picture the area right now. It's basically like a field, right? So we don't have to worry about protected vegetation and stuff like that.
It's largely flat. There's no protected vegetation and when you get to the west side is where there's a pretty hard line of where that natural area starts. And so that's kind of the critical line, but that's right at the property line of
Okay.
the plan.
And I know we're still conceptual here. I'm trying to see, it's really small, but in the proposed future district attorney expansion space, are we proposing just to have that as grass or as like a plaza or?
No, and in fact, I've taken out, I'm shown massing here to make it shown as the same way as that future proposed correction facility. The landscape design of this is another area that's not fully finalized. We probably wouldn't be building the just grass or just these sidewalks around that area. It would be planted much more naturally, much more in context of that. The key would be not to be putting parking there that we're going to have to remove when we want to build something, or putting any kind of major infrastructure key to the courthouse there. And so that would be landscaped, but the landscape design of the whole campus is pretty conceptual at that point, where we've just tried to give a sense of the density of that kind of vegetation, the kinds of public improvement we're going to have to provide for parking along arterials and along that collector road. But other than that, it's very conceptual and not an actual landscape plan at this point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Weiss, just to clarify one question you asked. So to the east of the proposed collector, there is approximately 8 acres, which are not slated for development right now. On that 8 acres, there is just over 1 acre of wetlands. So just wanted to add that point.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that.
That was my question, is how much, if any, extra space there was. So you're saying to the right of the collector road is 8 acres, 7 acres net that's will be available.
Correct.
Okay.
The last 2 slides, I just have to touch on some phasing and the kind of feedback we've received so far in the planning process, from a pre-application process. If there's other questions, please just let me know as we go through it. This is crude. This is me just taking white out and removing the buildings that are not in this first phase of the project. First phase of the project, meaning courthouse and some associated district attorney space on the first floor of that courthouse. And so I've whited out the sheriff and emergency building, the correctional building, and the parking associated with it. Important to note on this is that in that first phase, what is still required to make the courthouse function is this ring road that goes around these buildings, these future buildings, to provide access to that interior courtyard. This red piece here is that sally port. So that sally port would be built as the first phase of the project. And then courthouse staff parking remains over here. And so this is the resulting kind of requirement of, this is what's needed to make the courthouse function. And then, so next steps, this is the phasing we just talked about. So phasing 1, courthouse, sally port, parking, ring road, and utilities, and then everything else we've been talking about. And last week, we have started some pre-application meetings with the planning department. As part of that, these plans have been shared with them. We've started to receive feedback. Those plans are also being solicited feedback from the Public Works Department, Fire Marshal. The other one that's critical is ODOT. And so that's all in the works. The ODOT meeting, I believe, is still on for tomorrow. So the intent of those meetings is for all of them to be joint meetings. The city, Public Works, ODOT, and the county and design team are all part of those meetings. What's critical about those meetings is the connections to Highway 20, which is the state facility where they will ultimately have a lot of control over what happens there. We have some traffic studies from last year when we were looking at trip caps. And so we have some information on what could possibly be required. It would, at that point, they were saying the traffic study was indicating a left turn lane. All of that will be worked through with ODOT. The kind of feedback we've received so far from the city has been positive. Everything we're showing and reflecting to you about our understanding of the site has been accurate. The setbacks, understanding of the kinds of requirements for utilities. There is a planned development overlay on this property. And through our due diligence, there's requirements for future development to comply with that planned development overlay. There's opportunities to lift that planned development overlay or comply with it. We've reflected, this is what we think that overlay is saying. We think we comply with these pieces of it. Do you agree? So we're going to be getting some collaborative feedback from the city if they're recommending for us to lift it or to comply with it. There's some negotiations and conversations going on about that. The other big piece, and the last big piece I'll touch on, is on the bottom left of this image is a second connection to Highway 20. And so this is something that's really important for operationally from the county side of things. Having an emergency way on and off the campus is really important. Otherwise, having a single collector road, we would the best way to do that is connecting to Highway 20. When we discuss this with the city, it's all of these discussions are ongoing and everything's in its draft form, but potentially we would want to be talking to the fire marshal too. We think that the fire marshal will also have a positive outlook on that second connection. The reason I'm talking about it is because there is some language in there about how parcels are connected to arterials. So first, there's a process to go through with the city itself. There is an exception that would need to be made for that to happen with the city's land use process. The second one is verifying all of that with ODOT. And so showing we have not received feedback on those plans yet from ODOT. And so that's the remaining piece that we'll be working with collaboratively as we move forward, talking with Public Works, Fire Marshal, and ODOT are the immediate next steps. But with that, that's the content. That's the spectrum of what we wanted to share today. Did you have any other questions or comments on what we've been looking at?
Sure. The land use process for the city, do you know if is that a director's decision? Does that go to the planning commission or city council?
We don't know yet. That will be dependent on a number of things. How zoning ends up working, what happens with recommendations for plan development overlay. All of that process is still to be determined.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, questions, Commissioner Warren?
Yeah, on that second access road, would that be a limited use just for the sheriff, or would it be a second public access?
We're not intending it for it to be public. We've talked about it internally a couple different ways, and ultimately it will be up to discussions with the county operationally, how they want it to work, and ODOT, how, if it's allowed, what possibly could be allowed there. It's not intended for it to be a public entrance. It could be a staff exit, and at the very least having an emergency, in case of emergency, way off the site is kind of the bare minimum piece that would allow that to function. But I think having the staff have a second way on and off the campus is also helpful. There's potential for it there's ways to mitigate how it's used, even from, if it is emergency and staff, is it right turn only as you're exiting, that type of thing. All of those still allowed to be functional and useful for the campus, but ultimately to be decided.
Great, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Joe?
Thanks, Commissioner. Mitch, I just wanted to thank you because it's obvious your team has put in a lot of work. And when you were sharing the first 3 iterations, I wasn't that excited, frankly. But once you got to this iteration, I think it looks great. And for me, the use of the site, how the buildings are oriented, I think is just fantastic. And I think the use of the overall campus and the look and feel is tremendous. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Other comments or questions? All right. Thank you so much. Or anything else for you too?
Nick, I do have one question. Can you give an update on the text amendment? It does relate to one of the facilities that Mitch showed today.
Sure. It is going before City Council this evening. I will attend. And of course, the text amendment, which is being advanced by the city, is not explicit to the Community Safety and Justice Campus. It applies broadly to general industrial zone properties within Corvallis, and the request that the city is making or for council to consider tonight is to add civic administrative services to properties zone general industrial. Excellent example of the need for this is immediately adjacent to our campus on the City Public Works Department, where not unlike our own Public Works Department, they have an administrative desk for walk-in public clientele. And so really flows kind of naturally with the type of services that are outright permitted under general industrial. And so that'll be heard this evening.
Thank you.
Good to know. Well, thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you coming and sharing all that with us. All right, I just want to acknowledge that we are a little bit behind on our agenda. That's okay. We've had some good conversations. We will move to item 4.4, requesting an exemption from competitive building for the construction management / general contracting services for the courthouse / district attorney's office component of the Benton County Justice System Improvement Program with Gary Stockoff. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's quite a title leading into that. I think you can thank ORS for that. As we move forward with our development of the plans for the courthouse and DA and get into the process, one thing that we'll be doing next, knowing that the strategy that we've already really pretty much identified for constructing this is the CM, Construction Manager General Contractor avenue, which not only helps us compress the schedule, but it also typically ends up being less costly to go this route as opposed to the traditional design, bid, and build. So this is where the contractor comes in and collaboratively we work through the process of developing that. The state requires that we make some findings of fact to support that, which is attached in your packet. And then and a public hearing then needs to be held to adopt an order to make that so. Now, we could have actually done this for the entire JSIP program, but in consultation with Joe and Nick and some others, we're only seeking at this time the CMGC contracting method for the courthouse and the DA. And this will again allow us, when it's time, we'll put out a RFP for a firm of this nature. It is competitively bid, advertised in the local paper and Daily Journal of Commerce. And then it goes through a process of scoring, not only just the fee, but also several qualification-based items. So it's done by a group of, we haven't decided yet who the committee will be that will review the RFPs, but we can also then, I think, also factor in an interview process as well. So it will be a competitively bid, just it'll be a CMGC process, not a standard set of plans. So with that said, I will entertain any questions you might have on the information that's been proposed. The intent right now is that the public hearing would be held 2 weeks from today.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions for Gary and or a motion, which is on page 45 of the packet?
I'd be happy to make a motion. I move to set a public hearing on September 20th, 2022 in the matter of requesting an exemption from competitive bidding for the construction management, general contracting services for the courthouse district attorney's office component of the Benton County Justice System Improvement Plan.
I will second that.
All right, motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you all.
We saved our time.
Yep. All right, moving on. That takes us to our business meeting and our consent calendar. Do I hear a motion to approve or pull anything or make any changes?
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, that moves us to proclamations. The first proclamation that we have is in the matter of proclaiming the month of September as Suicide Awareness and Prevention. And I believe I have listed on here Damian Sands with Behavioral Health Division.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioner. So, yes, my name is Damian Sands. I am the new Behavioral Health Director. It's an absolute pleasure to meet all of you. I will tell Ms. Bennett something that I think is very important for us to sort of review. So, without further ado, I will read as stated. The month of September 2022 is National Suicide Prevention Week and National Recovery Month, when millions of people around the world join their voices to share a message of hope and healing. And these observances are united in raising awareness that prevention is possible, treatment is effective, and people do recover. In these challenging times, messages of hope and healing are more needed than ever. Benton County is committed to treating suicide and substance use as a public health issue and urges all residents to play a role in suicide prevention and promoting health and wellness. And Benton County residents should be able to access high-quality prevention, support, rehabilitation, treatment services that lead to recovery and a healthy lifestyle. And every day in Benton County, people enter treatment into behavioral health services, community sports, and begin the road to wellness and recovery. And recovery and wellness encompasses the whole individual, including mind, body, spirit, and community. And the benefits of preventing and overcoming mental health challenges, suicide attempts, loss, and substance abuse are significant and valuable to individuals, families, and our communities at large. And we must encourage relatives, friends, co-workers, and providers to recognize the signs of a problem and guide those to appropriate services and supports. And Suicide Prevention Week and Recovery Month inspire millions of Americans to raise awareness, build resiliency, and find hope. Now, therefore, the Benton County Commission has proclaimed the month of September 2022 in suicide prevention, the Recovery Month, finding hope, building resiliency, and supporting recovery.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Yep. I'll move to proclaim September 2022 Suicide Prevention Awareness and National Recovery Month in Benton County. It's Proclamation B 2022-016.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.
I would like to say one more word, and that is that we are having a community forum on the mental health and intersection with the justice system next week. That's Tuesday, the September 13th. And information about that can be found on our website for the Justice System Improvement Program. It will be held at the Linus Pauling Middle School, correct?
That's correct.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Any other comments regarding this?
Just welcome and nice to, I'm glad you came in person.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, very good. Welcome. And if you're ever looking for a side gig, I think you'd be really good at narrating audiobooks. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Next up is in the matter of proclaiming September 17th, 2022 as Constitution Day in Benton County with Nancy Wise, Chair of Benton County Board of Commissioners. Hey, that's me. All right. Our founding fathers, in order to secure the blessings of liberty for themselves and their posterity, did ordain and establish a Constitution for the United States of America and signed it on September 17th, 1787. And the conventions of a number of the states, having at the time of their adopting the Constitution, expressed a desire in order to prevent misconstruction or abuse of its powers, that further declaratory and restrictive clauses shall be added, and which subsequently became known as the Bill of Rights. Amendments 1 through 10, December 15th, 1791, and subsequent amendments enacted throughout the years strengthened the rights of citizens and ensured their right to vote. And Amendment 13, Section 1, declared that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to its jurisdiction. December 6, 1865. And Amendment 14, Section 1, declared that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state where they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. July 9th, 1868. And Amendment 15, Section 1, declared the right of citizens of the United States to vote, the right of the citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. February 3rd, 1870. And Amendment 19 declared the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. August 18th, 1920. And Amendment 24 declared the right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for president or vice president, for electors, for president or vice president, or for senator or representatives in Congress, shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. January 23rd, 1964. And Amendment 26, Section 1, declared the rights of citizens of the United States who are 18 years of age or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. July 1st, 1971. And it is of great importance that all citizens fully understand the provisions and principles in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and subsequent amendments, and the 235th anniversary of the signing of the original Constitution provides an opportunity for all Americans to reflect on the rights and privilege of citizenship as well as its responsibilities. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that September 17th, 2022 is recognized as Constitution Day in Benton County, and citizens are urged and encouraged to reflect on the benefits of our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and subsequent amendments, and the privileges and responsibilities of American citizenship. And do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll move in the matter of proclaiming September 17th, 2022 as Constitution Day in Benton County. That's proclamation P 2022-015.
Well, thank you. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Any comments on that?
Good job reading.
Thank you.
And yes, it's important to honor our Constitution and all of its meaning.
Yes.
It was nice to go over the history of some of the amendments.
All right, and with that, we can move to 6.3 in the matter of proclaiming September 2022 as National Preparedness Month in Benton County. And we have with us Brian Lee.
Yes, good morning, commissioners. Morning, everyone. So I will kind of read through our proclamation, but just to highlight, we are at the 2-year anniversary of the Labor Day fires of 2020 here in Oregon. As you folks know, that was really a monumental situation across the state where all of our resources were stretched thin on top of the COVID pandemic. And it really pushed a lot of communities to their max and caused a lot of damage in communities. And those psychological impacts are still taking its toll, as well as communities are still in the recovery process. So part of this proclamation piece is just highlighting the importance of not only preparedness, but also the mitigation and planning activities that we participate in here in Benton County. So with that, I will go ahead and read through this proclamation. So in the matter of proclaiming September National Preparedness Month in Benton County, whereas National Preparedness Month, occurring annually in September since 9/11, creates an ideal opportunity for community members, businesses, and visitors of Benton County, Oregon to join other community members across the United States in preparing their homes, businesses, and communities for any type of emergency, including natural disasters, and the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and other federal, state, and local officials and the private sector are working to prevent and respond to all types of emergencies. And when individuals take responsibility for preparing their families and their communities, the chance of survival and return to normalcy following a disaster is greatly increased. And the United Nations climate study and other research indicates that the impact of climate change will lead to significantly more frequent and more severe disasters. And the Benton County Sheriff's Office Emergency Management Division partners with federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, private, and volunteer agencies to inform individuals on how to take action through our public education campaigns and our local volunteer programs, such as the Community Emergency Response Team, American Red Cross, law enforcement volunteers, amateur radio services, and comprehensive planning and coordination efforts. And residents, businesses, and visitors of Benton County, Oregon are urged to plan ahead for disasters and encourage their family and friends to also do so by participating in neighborhood preparedness activities, registering their contact information in the local emergency notification system, Lynn Benton Alert, and preparing an annual readiness events. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Benton County Board of Commissioners, proclaims September 2022 as National Preparedness Month, and encourage all community members, businesses, and visitors to develop their own emergency preparedness plans.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I would move that we proclaim September National Preparedness Month in Benton County as proclamation number P 2022-017.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.
I would like to add that every month should be Preparedness Month, but September is a good one to highlight. Wildfire season is still, in fact, it's one of the top months for wildfires, and plus it gives us an opportunity to think about winter that's coming, and flood possibilities or freezing, and having a to-go bag and just getting ready, because we never know what's around the corner. But really appreciate your efforts, Brian, and that, see the sheriff there, and that's falls on your shoulders first. So I think we could use a few, another Brian or two, but I think we're in good shape with the one we had. I really appreciate mentioning climate change, and that just looking backwards at what has happened won't prepare us well enough for some of the challenges that are in our future. So appreciate your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do want to call out that our new Benton County Emergency Management Planner and Coordinator, Chelsea Chitka, did start last week. So help is here and we're getting going.
Welcome.
Hi, Chelsea. Welcome.
Thank
All right,
you very much for the welcome.
Thank you, Brian, for reading that proclamation. We appreciate that. What a great month, September. It's lots of good things to proclaim. All right, moving on to new business. 7.1, discussion and decision regarding the creation of 2 new regular full-time public health positions, climate and health coordinator and communicable disease investigator. And with us, we have April Holland. Welcome.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you again for the second time today. First, for the approval of these positions, I want to say right off the bat that the 2 positions up for your approval today are covered by mid-budget and other funding streams from OHA and the state legislature that are as sustainable as any of our public health funding. There's no request here for general revenue funds. So I'm going to jump right in and feel free to stop me and ask questions. I'm going to just jump in with the climate and health coordinator position. This is a program coordinator 1 position. And, we know that climate change has profound and direct and indirect impacts on health with outsized effects on underserved community members. And as the climate changes, public health must be at the forefront to convene, communicate, collaborate internally and externally, and co-create with our community culturally appropriate ways to adapt and remain resilient to environmental change. The climate and health coordinator will work at the intersection of climate change and human health with major functional areas in outreach, community mobilization and coalition building, as well as climate and health planning, assessment, implementation, and evaluation. This is poised to be housed in our environmental health program. And the position will also conduct funded regulatory climate and health related duties, including work around the Clean Air Act and tobacco retail licensing. As public health modernization funds increase through PE 5101 from $153,000 in the 2019 to 2021 biennium to $589,000 in the 2021 to 2023 biennium, the intersection of climate and health was identified as an area of focus to work toward filling the modernization framework. Tobacco prevention also received additional ongoing midstream funds to help cover 0.25 FT of this position, as Benton County is now responsible for tobacco retail licensing of all of its county jurisdictions. And without this position, public health would basically lack the capacity to fulfill its modernization goals, which could affect our future modernization funding. And the community just wouldn't benefit from county collaboration on health-specific adaptation and planning. And so to summarize, this position would be funded by 50% public health modernization, 25% enforcement of Indoor Clean Air Act, and 25% tobacco retail licensing fund, all sustained sources of funding outside of general revenue. And due to the midstream nature of the funding received, we're requesting that this be a permanent position, which requires your approval. Thank you for your consideration on that one. Would you like me to pause here or jump right to the next?
Questions or comments about this one specifically? No? Okay, go ahead, April.
Great. So the second position is titled a Communicable Disease Investigator. It is classified as a Technical Analyst 1 position. And this communicable disease investigator, I'll call it a CD investigator, position stems from new midstream funding from OHA, which was just effective July 2022 to support disease intervention client services for specifically for sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV. The funding requires 1 FTE to conduct this work. The CD investigator will significantly increase the capacity of our core CD team to conduct this work of disease prevention and control. Nationally, rates of many communicable diseases have been climbing steadily for years with little additional investment in that core funding for disease investigation outside of COVID-19. Benton County is not alone in experiencing things like HIV outbreaks, cases of congenital syphilis and perinatal hepatitis B, which were uncommon occurrences a decade ago here. Additional investment in communicable disease will allow more capacity for responding to individuals with disease, their contacts, and as well to conduct essential health education and prevention. If this position were not approved, we'd lack the capacity to fulfill the responsibilities to meet that growing need for investigation, resource connection, education, and prevention services to folks affected by communicable diseases. Furthermore, we'd be ineligible to receive this great PE10 funding from OHA as it requires the 1.0 FTE to perform these disease intervention services. The remaining funds in this program element, to let you know, they provide support to our harm reduction program, which provides syringe exchange, life-saving naloxone, and support and resources to some of our county's most vulnerable residents. And again, due to the midstream nature of the funding received, we are requesting that this position be approved by this board today. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, April. It sounds like these positions are going to increase our bandwidth and better serve our community, which is why we're all here, right? To serve our community. And there are sustainable funding streams. So sounds good to me. Any comments or questions or motion?
Just a comment on the second position. Do you anticipate the funding continuing?
Yes, Commissioner, we anticipate that this funding will continue.
Okay. I second the notion of these are important additions to our capacity, and I love the funding streams that come with these efforts, and would be glad to make a motion. Okay. I move to approve the creation of 2 new full-time regular positions, a climate health a coordinator, and a communicable disease investigator.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Well, I think that our emergency management team will be happy to have one more person to help with some of the planning for potential climate-related response and mitigation. So we just granted Commissioner Malone's earlier wish.
Very good. All right. Any other comments or questions, April or Suzanne? All right. Thank you very much for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
And next, that brings us to our old business, 8.1, approval of the August 28th, 2017 minutes.
Don't you mean old business?
And with that, Vance, was there anything that you would like to say?
Just want to explain why this is here and not on the consent calendar. 2017 minutes, the only commissioner who was in attendance that is still a commissioner is Commissioner Ojero. Do you remember this one? It was in the auditorium of the Gruber Hall. So it was to discuss creation of the MOU, which has been in effect for 5 years now, and to change Chapter 16, which describes fair board duties and responsibilities. It was a culmination of probably 2 years worth of work trying to trying to bring our fair board and board of commissioners back on the same page over, gosh, several decades. We sort of had diverged in ideas and thoughts on how the fair board should be managed and operated. This meeting really was the last of a series of meetings at which those discussions were held and consensus was achieved. This directed staff to go ahead and make a change to chapter 16 and create the MOU. So my request to the board is, if you're all comfortable approving these minutes, and then Commissioner Otero would be the one signing. That way we put this to bed. It's with all of our approved minutes and anybody can find them if they want to.
Perfect.
Did I capture that to the best of your recollection?
Yes, you did. And I was quite involved in that process, and it was one of the best accomplishments of that first year in office. So, yeah, it's kind of fun to see this come back before us, even though it's an oversight and getting the minutes done.
A little dusty now.
Get a little dusty.
And Commissioners, the reason it's coming back before you is Teresa Farley, who was working on archiving minutes, realized that this one had never been approved as part of that process. So hence it's back in front of you today.
Well, and as liaison to the Fair Board, I've kind of familiar with this concept and trying to define where who does what. And so I'm comfortable proceeding.
Great.
And just to clarify, our practice as a board is not to approve minutes that you were not a part of. However, state law does give us that ability. We just don't use it in our practice.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, any other comments or questions or motion?
Okay, I will bring up the date here. I'll move to approve the minutes from the August 28th, 2017 work session meeting between the Benton County Commissioners and the Fair Board.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Consider that dusted off and back on the shelf.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And then that brings us to other. Is there any other for the good of the order before we move into executive session? Hearing none, we will take a short 10-minute break. And before we enter our executive session, we will come back at 11:24.
Recording stopped.